everybody. Good afternoon and welcome to the New York City Planning Commission meeting of Monday, review session of Monday, November 16th, 2020. Before we begin our regular agenda, we have a special presentation on the industrial business incentive area. Jen, ready to go?
Yes, thank you, Ryan. Good afternoon, my name is Jennifer Gravel. I'm the director of the Housing and Economic Development Division here at City Planning. And I'm pleased today to be joined by my colleague as backup, Dylan Sandler, who I need to thank for preparing the materials that I'm going to share today. And I'm glad to be able to provide a little more context to the IBIA. But before I dive into the program itself, I'd like to put it into, next slide, please. Thank you. Before I dive into the program itself, I want to provide a little context on the economic development context and planning context in M zones. As the Commission is well aware, up until very recently, there was rapid job growth across the city, really since 2000, and great diversification in the city's economy that led to job growth outside the central business district in all 5 boroughs, as well as in the manufacturing zones. And a lot of this growth was also driven by the growth in the residential population. And in those areas, in the M zones near that growing residential population, we saw new demand for office space near those residences, as well as demand for retail and services. So particularly in places like Greenpoint Williamsburg and Long Island City, those industrial business zones were flanked by rapidly growing residential communities that were driving a lot of that growth. The department has viewed this positively. It's been an opportunity to increase the amount, the density, and the diversity of jobs in those areas. It's also bringing more jobs closer to more New Yorkers, which was a major goal identified in the New York Works Jobs Plan. In the IBZs in particular, those IBZs in particular where there's a stronger market for those services, amenities, and office space, it's presenting both opportunities and challenges for a lot of the existing and new industrial businesses that those IBZs have aimed to support. So for manufacturing in particular, like those manufacturing uses that have been performing best in New York City, so uses like food production, high-end construction-related manufacturing, the increased activity, the growing residential population, the foot traffic in these neighborhoods was bringing more customers. It was also supporting some new business models that could make sort of manufacturing work in a new environment. So we were seeing new business models where manufacturing was mixing with retail, or manufacturing was mixing with entertainment spaces. And the manufacturing was evolving along, in some cases, evolving along with these neighborhoods. But it has also, quite frankly, also presented new challenges for industrial businesses as more competition for that space has led rents to rise, and for some businesses, increased operating costs to really an untenable point. And it's really in this environment that the department released 2 major studies that looked at how can we both increase the job density and diversity of employment in our industrial business zones while continuing to support the industrial businesses that were there or that we envisioned being there in the future. So there were 2 major pieces of the work that were released in 2018. And the first was the North Brooklyn Industry and Innovation Plan. And this was really a neighborhood scale look at, how do we look across the neighborhood at growing jobs, making the best of density, making the most of our zoning, while also supporting the industry that was there. And then there was the Can Industrial Mixed Use Buildings Work in New York City, a very sort of blatantly named study, but this was really looking at within a building, how can you mix these uses and grow these uses? So one study was really at the neighborhood scale and the other one was at the building scale. And what both studies found was that there were actually a number of obstacles within the zoning itself, such as onerous required off-street parking requirements, insufficient floor area ratios, and unworkable, outdated bulk envelopes that were really not meeting the needs of either the industrial or the office tenants that were envisioned in the area. So it was really sort of pointing toward sort of more drastic and more broad changes necessary in many of our manufacturing districts. So it was in this environment that the first industrial business incentive area application came forward. And it was really, the IBIA was really about kind of putting a toe in the water to test some of these strategies. And while we're seeing a lot of interest in the IBIAs, we're also thinking about new solutions across neighborhoods for job growth outside Manhattan. And the Gowanus study, I think, is one good example of that. Next slide, please. We were before the commission when we released the industrial mixed-use typology study, but I think it's worth reminding all what we found. So this was a study that really aimed to look at the conditions under which mixed industrial developments could work in New York City. And it really looked at sort of three perspectives: look at tenanting and operation, it looked at design, and it looked at the financials. You know, and the headline is that it can work, but not everywhere and not under all circumstances. The first, related to tenanting and operations, is that it found that there's really a limited pool of industrial tenants that are compatible. And the most compatible industrial tenants tend to be small scale, niche, light manufacturing uses. So high performance manufacturing uses that don't have a lot of need for a lot of off-street loading or a lot of off-street parking, not truck intensive. Yet, you know, admittedly, a lot of what happens in the industrial business zones in terms of activity, in terms of the amount of job growth, in terms of the amount of land use is really more geared toward truck intensive uses in construction, wholesale, and distribution. So, you know, the mixed industrial typology really is not for all industrial businesses, but it does work quite well with these smaller niche manufacturing uses. And then related to design, even with small scale manufacturing uses, they do have, you know, special needs with regard to off-street loading, with regard to floor loads, electrical loads, and plumbing. And there really has to be the buildings will work best that are thoughtfully designed. And the study found that larger lots with multiple frontages that could be designed in a way to accommodate off-street loading, that could accommodate separate elevators, would be best to reduce the conflicts. And the sweet spot was really lots of 20,000 square feet or larger that tend to work the best, and lots that have multiple frontages. The study also found that the zoning itself presented obstacles to developing these kind of buildings. And I should, you know, point out, so that I mentioned the off-street parking and loading, but the bulk envelopes also did not allow for a building that has generally been preferred by both office and industrial tenants. And that is this sort of the loft building that we all know as this sort of New York City archetype, is really not the building form that most manufacturing zoning encourages today. So those lofty buildings with flexible floor plates, large flexible floor plates and big windows, that really could be sort of flexibly used and could go from office to industry and back again, are hard to build under, oddly enough, hard to build under current zoning. So we have sort of bulk envelopes that didn't really cater to the market that was there. It didn't cater to what buildings needed. And we had these high off-street parking and loading requirements, which actually significantly increased the cost of construction to the point where these buildings didn't pencil out. The study also looked at rents and what rents were being paid for what sorts of uses in the neighborhood. And it found that in many of the markets where there's a demand for mixed building, there's not actually a proven market for spec office space. And there's been little sort of unsubsidized ground up construction of new manufacturing space. So in many of the markets studied in the city, there's, you know, only the most nascent market for standalone industrial or standalone office buildings. And the mixing even complicates these even more. But that said, it does work in some circumstances, but I would say that it's in relatively few sites and in limited geographies, but it can work. Next slide, please. Getting into the IBIA. So soon after releasing, actually before we released the industrial mixed use typology, we were approached in 2016 to facilitate a mixed-use office building at 25 Kent Avenue. There was no existing M zoning at the time that really allowed for the densities or the bulk envelopes or the mix of uses that really worked for a workable project. Density was already allowed in the district at the time as a community facility use, but the department saw office uses as appropriate in the Greenpoint Williamsburg IBZ where this was proposed. The surrounding uses were already mixed. It was heavily entertainment oriented, and the job generating uses proposed for the project seemed like a good mix. You know, that said, there wasn't a desire to remove the industrial business zone. There was a desire to encourage an industrial presence in Greenpoint Williamsburg. And there wasn't an appetite to rezone the neighborhood. And as far as the IBZs go, this is in terms of the acreage, very small. So the IBIA was really a targeted strategy to allow what we viewed as a good project to move forward in a way that was complementary to the industrial job objectives of the industrial business zone. Next slide, please. So again, the goal of the IBIA special permit is to encourage a growth of jobs and job densities and promote really a beneficial mix of both commercial and industrial uses. There are also some findings related to regulations related to site planning and streetscape in order to make the environment around the buildings a good work environment for both industrial and office tenants. So there's actually two special permits within the zoning. The first allows for a floor area increase and relaxed bulk envelopes to make this more boxy, loft-like, large floor plate building that we all sort of come to appreciate over time. It also allows for reductions in parking and loading requirements. Next slide, please. So what does it do? I mean, in a nutshell, the IBIA special permit allows more density for office uses if a minimum amount of space is created for certain high-performing industrial uses, and most of which are light manufacturing. It also permits modifications to the bulk envelopes to allow for a building that's better designed for industrial and office uses. And finally, it reduces off-street parking and loading that would generally be infeasible or cost prohibitive to provide in this higher density context. Next slide, please. So I think it's fair to say this is a tool. It's devised as a strategy, to have a project move forward. It was to test some of our assumptions about what wasn't working in the zoning. So it's fair to ask, so like, in what other situations do we see it as appropriate? Well, I think it's important to remember that the IBIA is about supporting job diversity and higher job densities. How do we get more out of our M zones in a way that's compatible with industry? It's not intended as a cross-subsidy for industry, but a way to allow jobs to grow alongside industry. So to that end, I would say it's appropriate in locations where there's a market for both office and industrial tenants, but not just any industrial tenants, really those subset of industrial tenants that can compatibly mix with office space. And Greenpoint Williamsburg and Long Island City do have a lot of these fundamentals. I would say this is not really a tool for those IBZs that are really more truck dependent and land intensive, that really do need extensive off-street parking and loading, don't benefit from the additional density, and create a lot of conflicts with surrounding uses. So it's less appropriate in those heavier industrial areas. And finally, I would say that the IBIA is not a substitute for area-wide plans, particularly given that the market is really untested for spec office, and that we haven't seen a lot of ground-up construction of new manufacturing space. It's probably not a long-term economic development strategy. So the intent here is not to say we're only going to allow office only through special permit, but it is a way for us to test a concept, to see how it works, to allow what we see as real projects, private applications to move forward, particularly in the current environment. Next slide, please. So we have we've had several approved applications in the Greenpoint Williamsburg IBZ, and there's one application before the commission currently in the Long Island City Industrial Business Zone. Both of these IBZs have a diverse mix of jobs. Excuse me. They've experienced a lot of job growth in recent years, and both have experienced tremendous growth of the surrounding residential communities. They have this sort of sweet spot of having a market for both office and industrial uses, particularly those light manufacturing niche, innovative manufacturing that we're seeing evolving alongside these neighborhoods. So they're really good test markets for industrial mixed use development and for new IBIAs as we move forward. Next slide, please. This is a snapshot of the projects that have been facilitated through the IBIA special permit. The first is 25 Kent Avenue, which was our first. The building's completed. It's about 320,000 square feet of office and retail space and 64,000 square feet of industrial space. It already has 3 leases signed. Even in the current environment, they've managed to maintain those leases, taking about 112,000 square feet of space. The next 2, 12 Franklin Street and 103 North 13th Street, also in the Greenpoint Williamsburg IBZs, are slightly smaller scale buildings and geared toward small and mid-size office and industrial tenants. And the final one, which is for the commission now, is 4211 9th Street in the Long Island City IBIA, Industrial Business Zone. And this is really a Class A office building, 18 stories of Class A office space and 64,000 square feet of industrial. And the industrial space here is really targeted toward the maker space with 2,500 square feet, so really small, but we have heard that there is demand in the market for this really small sort of maker space for industrial businesses. That it's hard to find those small spaces. So if the special permit is intended to test the viability of mixed industrial business, it's certainly fair to ask, how do we evaluate it? How do we know if it's working? I think the first thing I would say that it's probably too soon to tell. This is a reminder, the first IBIA special permit was only created in 2016, which in the world of real estate development and the land use process is really kind of like a blink of an eye. The fact that we have 4 projects that have already taken advantage of it is actually promising. I think it's telling that the fact that the special permit is uniform. The applicants go through a process knowing what's expected of them, I think has made it more appealing. And the fact that the final project is moving forward despite the current economic climate, I think is an indication that there is cautious optimism that this will continue to be a good and relevant approach. And in 25 Kent, I would point out as well, has 3 tenants, and hopefully they will remain committed to the building moving forward. Next slide, please. With that, happy to take any questions you have. I'll be joined by my colleagues in the Brooklyn and Queens office who can speak to questions specific about their boroughs and the applications that they're seeing.
Thanks so much, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner DeLuz.
Hi, Jen. Thanks so much for that overview. I know I've raised it probably every single certification or hearing process about the need to evaluate, and I appreciate your saying that it takes time to evaluate. So just two questions at this time anyway. You said that there's 3 tenants in place for 25 Kent. What's, how much of that is industrial versus office? That would be helpful to know. And then as part of the evaluation moving forward, remind me if we're gathering data about the quality of the jobs, like how many jobs, how much people are earning, and whether we're doing that both for the office component and the industrial component.
I'm going to defer to my Queens colleagues Brooklyn office colleagues on the split of industrial versus office. I believe one of the three tenants is industrial. I'm not quite sure how much space they're taking. So I see Winston just popped up if he wants to chime in on that one.
Right, it's Kith and Alex Summer from the Brooklyn office, and Karenza can join in as well. But it's Kith, it's a clothing company, is actually taking the industrial space. And it's significant that actually they're the first tenants to sign in the building, and are signing for the industrial space. But one of the challenges I would point out is that a good portion of their space, of their production space, is actually computer based. And so keeping that balance between sort of old style industrial and computers, as you probably heard during our garment center discussions. And the other space is office. It's to I believe it's Amazon took some office space, and another company.
That's right. It's Amazon Music and a local brewery.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Well, yeah, just to follow up on that question, I wanted to know what percentages of the industrial and commercial spaces respectively are occupied at this point.
Right. So using the math of the of what Jen just said, which is just I think at 25 Kent, just over 110,000 square feet or so. It's about a quarter of the building, right? So there's still more space that can be occupied in that building.
And how does that, again, Winston, how would that break down between the commercial space and the industrial space?
Alex, do you happen to know the number for the industrial space by Kith?
I believe they're close to 60,000 square feet for the industrial, but we can get the exact numbers in the breakdown from the development team.
So is that most of the industrial space? I mean,
That's right.
and commercial?
No, it's not predominantly the commercial space. It's mostly the required industrial use space, which, as Winston mentioned, was actually the first of the tenants to sign, which we were excited and surprised by.
So how much of the commercial space is occupied at this point? What percentage of the commercial space is occupied?
In total, it would be about a quarter of all of the floor area. The clothing designer would be about all of the required industrial use, about 60,000 square feet. And then so another 40 to 60,000 square feet for the non-required industrial use space. Out of the remaining like 300,000.
Okay, that's helpful. So in a nutshell, almost all of the industrial space and maybe a quarter of the office space has been spoken for.
That's right. And happy to come back with the specific numbers from the development team when we can get that.
Great, thanks,
Thank
Alex. Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you. Between Commissioner Deleuze and Commissioner Knuckles, they covered the main questions that I had in my mind, so I'm left with kind of a detail. I realize the current zoning requires there to be monthly reporting on a website about the status of the industrial space, and I couldn't find anything like that on 25 Kent's website. Are we monitoring what they're supposed to be reporting?
That's right. We have an annual certification that's required as part of that, and we're working with our counsel's office to have them develop the format and then supply that with you and the city council member and others on an annual basis.
Okay, and they're supposed to, well, wait, I thought the text said it was supposed to be quarterly. And they're supposed to have a sign on the building that gives the website where you can go for information about what the industrial space is supposed to be and its configuration and so on. Are we working to get them to step up to that requirement?
Yes.
Okay, it's a little disappointing that It's not in place. I mean, 4 years is a blink of an eye for in the real estate world, indeed. But you know, I think what we were all worried about when we unleashed this possibility is that there would be great enthusiasm about the building and the commercial space, and that the industrial space would sort of be an afterthought, and no one would pay attention to what it takes to nurture successful industrial space in these commercial buildings. And that continues to be a concern.
Right, I think it speaks to the challenge, the financial challenge, the economics of building speculative office space of any kind of commercial space. And that's what Jen alluded to as part of the challenges that we also identified as part of the study about mixed use buildings.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me of the conversations we had during the hearing on 25 Kent, where there was big push from a lot of the advocates that there should be a not-for-profit organization overseeing the tenanting and operation of the industrial space. And that didn't end up being in the text, but that whole line of conversation underlines the challenges that you just alluded to. And we want to be sure that this really is useful, valuable, productive industrial space, and not just an afterthought for developers who want to put commercial space in an M zone.
I would think that, I would hope the commissioners are excited about the fact that it was the industrial space that was taken up first in this.
Right. Yeah, and I'd be interested what the term of that lease is. I thought I read someplace that it was fairly short term. But
so Winston and Alex, is that something you could follow up with?
Sure.
Absolutely, yeah.
thank you.
Right, and we should say that we were consulted ahead of time when this use was being considered, on whether or not it conformed to the requirements. And I believe, and Alex should correct me, the reporting requirement is when the tenants move in, and I don't believe they've moved in just yet.
All right, although the lease was announced quite some time ago, but I guess we had like a 6-month pause in the middle. I forgot.
I'm forgetting a lot, and I blame it on the pandemic. Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, a sort of basic question. You know, I know we recognize the synergy between light industrial in particular and office. You know, sometimes the devil's in the details and how the designation, what makes a designation of light industrial. Winston, you mentioned some of the issues around, you know, computer tech. Could you just speak to that designation and what kinds of things that maybe we sometimes consider marginal might fall into it?
You mean things that sort of straddle this office and light industrial? Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously those things that are most compatible with office are going to be most likely to straddle this divide. And, you know, over time, as manufacturers adopt new technologies, it will become blurrier, which you know, underscores the challenge here. You know, that said, there are a lot of businesses that, you know, they believe they're manufacturing, they advertise as manufacturing, they're reporting as manufacturing. But it is hard over time. And I think if there's a desire, there is, you know, in those instances when there's a desire for a very curated environment, and to get back to Commissioner Delou's question, which I didn't answer, I didn't get the opportunity to answer regarding the quality and quantity of those jobs. There's really a good opportunity in the city-owned assets to keep a much closer eye on that. I mean, I think within our sort of in our zoning framework, I think we're trying to regulate the use to the extent that we can. But if there's, you know, when we want to curate them, we have Brooklyn Navy Yard and the Brooklyn Army Terminal. If there's a desire to really have a lot of control over the tenants that are coming and going, and specifically the kinds of jobs they're offering, there's a lot more control the city has over in those circumstances. I think we have to see this tool as a private market tool that is not a subsidy, but something that wants to encourage industry to coexist in a commercial market.
So then is it fair to say that just the designation of light industrial is fairly broad, and that just, we might end up getting uses that, on the surface might not feel light industrial, but actually comply with that designation.
I mean, it's certainly possible, but in these circumstances, in the Brooklyn office may be able to speak to that when they've, applicants have some guidance on whether certain tenants comply. We have generally been sticking with our sort of conventional understanding of what that is and the kinds of uses we're seeing in the neighborhood.
I would also, I'd build on what Jen said. We see a changing nature of work, whether in industrial manufacturing or in office work, and don't view ourselves as wanting to stand in the way of the changing nature of work. I think back when some of us took a site visit at Industry City, and we saw a bathing suit manufacturer that had clearly indicia of manufacturing, rolls of cloth and sewing, but also a lot of technology and computer screens where people worked.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up, Chair?
Yes, of course.
Jennifer, I think it's interesting the way you just framed it, that this is really about a private market tool that's focused on use. And I would just say that I think was the thinking about inclusionary housing on the housing side more than 15 or 20 years ago, right? And that the thinking has evolved, that obviously inclusionary housing, the whole concept of incentivizing the creation of affordable housing, either through voluntary and now mandatory uses, in order to produce a use, AKA affordable housing, that is in the public benefit. At first, we didn't ask for a lot of reporting on it, right? Fast forward 15, 20 years later, we realized we need to be asking these questions to make sure. We need to be asking and quite honestly directing a lot more, so that we preserve that space, or we incentivize that space for the kinds of things that our city wants and needs. And so if we truly believe that we want to create industrial uses and preserve them, then I think we're going to get to the point where we're going to want to ask those questions. Now, this current administration may not be there yet, but the advocates are there, right? The advocates have been there for a while. And so I would encourage the department to think further about that, because I think it's one of those things where hopefully our thinking does evolve over time.
Clearly our thinking evolves over time, but I will note the difference that housing, when it's produced, there is, because we have a housing crisis, there's a demand. Creating a tool that results in it not being used, or where there is not the demand, looks good on paper, like some of our early affordable housing, where we had these great districts, but no one built anything underneath it. And so it is always that fine balance in getting tools that actually work. Clearly, as Jen said, the IBIA is an attempt to be looking at it. We are heartened by the fact that there is interest. We are also heartened by the fact that the first of them led with the industrial, which obviously there had been a concern that expressed, as Commissioner Levin expressed, that it would just be commercial with the empty industrial. But clearly an area that we have to continue to keep our eye on.
I would just say, especially since it seems that the market is there and people are coming forward with additional applications, right? Like that's when you kind of like, okay, let's gather more data so we can be clear we're like achieving the goals that we're hoping for.
Yeah, I think that we will with time have a lot more. The first tenants haven't yet moved in. We know that we have 2 other approved but not under construction. And the question becomes, at what point does one have a demonstrated to say, continue with it or do something more systemically? Let's see. I don't see any others. I thank the commissioners for their questions. I know that it had come up on individual projects, so it was very helpful for us as a department to step back and look at it holistically. And Ryan, with that, I think we can go on to the normal order of business.
Sure. So continuing with our first item on our regular agenda, and also a theme here, I think, is a certification of a zoning map amendment and referral of an authorization in Brooklyn Community District 6. Our presenter is Jonathan Keller.
Good afternoon. I will be presenting on 300 Huntington, a private application, and I will walk you through some of the background info on the applicant, the genesis of the project, what they're proposing, and how the proposed actions would facilitate their proposed development. Next slide. So the applicant, 300 Huntington Street LLC, also known as Monadnock Construction, is requesting a zoning map amendment to reduce the parking requirements for job generating uses and an authorization to modify waterfront public access area requirements to address the unique character of the Gowanus Canal. In addition to these actions, the applicant is seeking a chair certification pursuant to section 6200-811 for waterfront public access and visual corridors. Next slide. If approved, these actions would facilitate a new 6-story light manufacturing and commercial building and new waterfront open space along the canal. The project site is located along the waterfront in the Gowanus neighborhood of Community District 6 in Brooklyn. Next slide. Monadnock Construction has called Gowanus its home since the 1970s and currently operates out of a site along the northwest portion of the canal at the 3rd Street Bridge. Next slide. Next slide. Is planning to move its headquarters a few blocks south to the project site. This would free up their current property that is within the proposed Gowanus rezoning area for a mixed-use affordable housing development pursuant to the forthcoming proposed rezoning. Next slide. The project area is within the Southwest Brooklyn IBZ. The portion of the IBZ east across the canal is zoned M21 and contains a mix of low-scale warehouses and multi-story loft-style buildings with various commercial and light industrial uses. Recently, former loft buildings have been reused and converted to space for artist studios, co-working, technology, media, and design firms, and other newly emerging business sectors, a trend that has led to property reinvestment and spurred employment growth. Next slide. The project area comprises the entirety of Block 477, which includes the proposed development site located on the northeast portion of the block along Huntington Street and the canal. Land uses on this block include an open contractor's yard and bus storage on the development site, and a deli and a restaurant space and a 1-story vacant building. The block is located in an M21 zoning district, which allows for a maximum FAR of 2.0 for industrial and commercial uses. Parking requirements vary by use and size of an establishment, though in general are quite high across the board. On the higher end of the spectrum, 1 space per 300 square feet for most commercial uses, including office space, is required. The project area is directly underneath the Smith and 9th Street F&G station. Surrounding area is characterized by a mix of residential, commercial, industrial uses, including former industrial buildings that have been adaptively reused for residential, a scrap metal facility and fuel oil storage depot, professional offices, ballrooms, local retail, and multiple breweries. To the north of the project area, outside the IBZ, Block 471 is zoned M31 and comprised of 2 large properties. One is privately owned, Lot 200, and the other is a city-owned site, Lots 1 and 100, known as the Gowanus Green Development Site. Both sites are within the proposed Gowanus rezoning area and contain approximately 10 acres of underutilized land that is currently vacant, or in the case of the privately owned site, used in connection with the Superfund remediation activities, dredging and staging work, which officially kicked off today, a big milestone at the head of the canal. Next slide. The project area is within the New York City coastal zone and partially located in a 1% annual chance floodplain and a 0.2% annual chance floodplain. Next slide. Here we see some photos of the project area showing the extent of how the Culver Elevated separates these blocks from the Carroll Gardens neighborhood. Next slide. A view of the development site from the canal and looking down Huntington Street. Next slide. The applicant proposes to develop a new 6-story manufacturing and commercial building with approximately 100,000 square feet of floor area to an FAR of 2. There would be approximately 80,000 square feet of office use, 12,000 square feet of ground floor commercial use, and 3,500 space in connection with a 1,500 square foot contractor yard. Next slide. The applicant plans to occupy approximately 27,000 square feet of the overall development, including 23,000 square feet of office space, and would lease out the remaining space. The ground floor retail space would front and activate a shore public walkway and Huntington Street. Loading will be provided in the rear of the building. No parking would be provided. Next slide. To facilitate the proposed development, the applicant is seeking a zoning map change from an M21 district to an M23 district. The existing M21 district would require more than 250 spaces be provided. Given the site conditions, including the irregular shape and high water table, providing these spaces would be extremely challenging and quite cost prohibitive. While the districts allow the same uses and floor area ratio, the M23 district has no parking requirements. Next slide. The applicant is also proposing to include an approximately 7,500 square foot waterfront public access area. As proposed, the waterfront public access area, WPAA, and the street end improvements the applicant is committed to constructing are designed to provide a public amenity that diversifies the waterfront edge along the canal. And the design you see in front of you, and that I will walk you through in a moment, was created in close consultation with the Brooklyn Borough Office and Waterfront and Open Space Division, and is consistent with our work in the forthcoming Gowanus Waterfront Access Plan. Many of the same principles you will see now, you will see when we certify the Gowanus rezoning in January. So this really gives you a bit of a preview of what we're expecting from the Gowanus WAP. Next slide. Specifically, the WPAA design encourages the use of active and playful grove areas, utilizing bundled wood benches, trusses, and industrial railings reminiscent of the historic waterfront uses along the canal. Next slide. The planned ground floor commercial space is intended to activate both Huntington Street and the waterfront esplanade. Next slide. The street end is designed with a step terrace that will have seating opportunities while simultaneously providing absorptive planting to catch runoff from the street. Next slide. While no upland connection, visual corridor, or supplemental access area is required, the applicant is providing a approximately 1,000 square foot public access area, PAA, along its Huntington Street frontage to provide connection and access from the WPAA to Huntington Street. This triangular portion fronting Huntington Street will also encompass the portion of the fire access turnaround that overlaps the development site. The PAA and the street turnaround are being designed cohesively with pedestrian-friendly pavings that creates a sidewalk-like condition across the turnaround. Next slide. Here are some artistic illustrative renderings of how it will feel in this space along the canal. Both views are looking south, this one from the primary pathway. Next slide. And this one from the lifted grove. Next slide. The applicant is seeking an authorization to modify certain dimensional area and design requirements for the WPAA to overcome site planning constraints. These constraints include the applicant's site-specific programming of public amenities that seeks to provide a diverse pedestrian experience and activating key components of the shore public walkway while providing flood-resilient construction and stormwater management. Next slide. The applicant is seeking to increase the maximum permitted grade change of 18 inches within 5 feet of the edge of any planting area to 39 inches. The change is needed to allow for the tiered planted grading along the bulkhead, which provides both a diverse pedestrian experience views and vantage points, along with salt-tolerant planting that will provide on-site retention of stormwater. Next slide. The applicant is also seeking to reduce the minimum planting area requirement from 50% to 26% due to the design goal of activating the waterfront through programmable space in the lifted grove area, including the activation of the area with the proposed commercial space. The lifted grove would include accessible seating on top of a stone dust pavement to allow a full range of accessibility and usability. The lifted grove would also include modular truss elements that mimic the nearby infrastructure vernacular. And just note, there would be additional planting area provided adjacent to the shore public walkway as part of the future connection to the MTA lot to the south, and also the private space adjacent to the proposed building. These spaces are not technically counted under the zoning resolution, but would be provided. Next slide. The applicant is also seeking to waive the minimum distance dimensions for tree pits, which are 5 feet with a minimum area of 30 square feet and a minimum depth of 42 inches. The waiver is needed to realize the design goal of the lifted grove, where the proposed stone dust pavement would extend over the root ball of the trees. The pervasiveness of the stone dust would create a contiguous occupiable surface throughout the grove, including underneath the canopy. All trees proposed within the grove will be planted with structural soil in order to accommodate healthy root growth, improve drainage, and provide improved aeration. Next slide. The applicant is seeking to waive the screening buffer requirement for a 10-foot portion of the elevated grove between the public access area and the edge of the proposed building. This waiver would allow for the seamless continuity between these spaces and would provide a visual connection between these elements and the canal. Next slide. The applicant finally is seeking to increase the maximum permitted height of a fence in the shore public walkway from 3 feet to 3.5 feet to prevent falls. The fence matches the guardrail that is in the WPAA and would prevent falls between the guardrail and fence screening buffer requirement for a 10-foot portion of the elevated grove between the public access area and the edge of the proposed building. This waiver would allow for the seamless continuity between these spaces and would provide a visual connection between these elements and the canal. Next slide. Finally, the applicant is requesting a zoning map amendment and CPC authorization to facilitate a new 6-story, approximately 100,000 square foot light manufacturing and commercial building and a superior waterfront design because of greater design flexibility to respond to the unique site conditions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Questions from the commission? Commissioner DeLuz.
Hi, Jonathan. It's nice to see this come before us, especially today, as you noted, when official dredging starts by the EPA. Just a couple things for when this comes back. I mean, as you said, Monadnock's been in the neighborhood a long time. They've been in conversation with a lot of folks in the neighborhood. You know, one thing that would be helpful to know is, and you alluded to it already, was like how this particular project may intersect with the redevelopment to the south on the Quadrosi site. I think there'll be a lot of people who are interested in that. So certainly when this comes back, if that could be something that the development team speaks to. I could imagine that when this comes back, we're definitely going to want to speak to the landscape architect involved, given the number of proposed changes, modifications to the waterfront plan. It'd be good to know what other green elements. I didn't see a green roof, but I'm assuming there actually is one, or so it'd be helpful to know. And if besides capturing, if there are any other CSO elements in terms of cisterns or treatment or anything like that. I think everybody knows the community's very, very eager to ensure that there's no new net CSOs into the canal. Certainly ones that are untreated. That would be helpful. And then to what extent this plan addresses some of the goals that in the local Gowanus Canal Conservancy, their lowland plan, that would be all helpful to know. And then also you mentioned the yard, the contractor's yard. Are there any drawings that show that? I'm trying to understand that piece of it, honestly.
Sure. So I think there should be some that show on the ground floor plan, and we can make sure if they're not clear, if they're there, we can send them to you. And if they're not clear, we can also have that be something that is talked through.
And in the yard, I mean, you said there's no parking, but does that mean in the yard component, there's also no parking?
So there's no parking requirements, or the parking requirements from the M23 is 0, and there wouldn't be provided parking for the office space. My understanding, and we can have Monadnock speak more to the mechanics of how they're envisioning the space. A lot of what you see here is actually in their site on 3rd Street. They have a flex space, a contractor yard, and also some parking that they use for their trucks or employees. I don't think any of those would be officially, provided per se, but I think if you look at the site as well, there's a bit of a odd configuration. So I think that area is going to be kind of a flexible space where they do both contractor and also some loading and unloading.
Okay, it would just be helpful, I think, to kind of understand that more.
Yeah.
As you said, their current space, does have limited number of parking uses, primarily for staff, it seems.
That's right. Yeah.
Okay.
Commissioner
Thank
Levin.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan. To add to the list of things to think about when this comes back, I'm curious to know, it seems to me that some of the modifications that are being sought here may not be unique to this site, but may apply to other sites along the canal, and indeed maybe other waterfront sites. I wonder if, for instance, the height of the fence and the tree pits, how much new thinking by the urban design and the folks who plan waterfront access is reflected here, and is it likely that some of these provisions that are being sought here would that this won't be the first application we'll see that are trying to make these changes?
Yeah, that's a great point. And actually, I'd also note, and I try to foreshadow a little bit, that we've been working very closely with this team, along with how we've been coming up with the Gowanus WAP. Some of the aspects of the WAP, if this was within the rezoning area with the WAP, wouldn't necessarily need the authorization. So
okay.
It has been part of the broader thinking, and I think we can also get into some of that in January, and roll up our sleeves and talk through some of that.
Excellent, thank you.
Commissioner Burney.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to add to the questions here about the stormwater management, because I do remember further up the canal at I think it's 2nd Street where the sponge park is, the landscape architects had complained that sort of lack of coordination with DOT, I guess, had meant that the road, stormwater from the road really wasn't running into the sponge park properly. So I know there are always those problems and those issues, but maybe the team, when they come back, can speak to how that's going to be addressed.
Yes, we can posit that question. I would note that the teams are different, and I don't believe the street end is really being planned in the same geotechnical way as the Sponge Park, but it has some of the same goals. And I think that they can definitely talk to how DOT, DEP policies have interacted with their design.
Yeah. Terrific, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, the application is certified. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Okay, item 2 on the agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in Queens Community District 6. Commissioner Ron Pashad has noted that he is recused on this item, and our presenter is Kathy Coe. Kathy, there we go.
Yes.
Let's just give a moment to load the presentation. There we go.
Great. Good afternoon, Commission. Next slide, please. This is the 6819 Woodhaven Boulevard rezoning. It's a private application in the Riga Park neighborhood of Queens, Community District 6. And this application is for a zoning map amendment from the existing C81 and R4 districts to an R6A and R6A with a C23 commercial overlay, as well as a zoning text amendment to establish a mandatory inclusionary housing area in order to facilitate an 8-story mixed residential, commercial, and community facility building. Next slide, please. The proposed project site is located in Rego Park with frontages on Woodhaven Boulevard, 68th Road, and Alderton Street. The area is generally served by buses. It's outside of the transit zone, and the closest Long Island Railroad and subway stations are located in Forest Hills, approximately 1 mile northeast of the project area. The project area is located directly east of St. John's Cemetery. And about 1 mile northeast is Forest Hills Stadium, and a cluster of big box stores is located about a half mile south of the project area. And that section includes a Trader Joe's and a Staples. It's on Metropolitan Avenue. Next slide, please. The proposed project site is located in C81 and R4 districts mapped in 1961. And most of the area is comprised of 2 to 3 story residences with a few 6-story residential buildings in the immediate vicinity of the area. Low-rise commercial uses and auto-related businesses such as car washes and auto shops are along Woodhaven Boulevard, and the area to the east is zoned R4B and is mostly characterized by low-density residential. Next slide, please. The proposed rezoning area includes lots 2 and 35. These are outlined in the dotted black line, and the proposed development site is outlined in red and includes only lot 2. Next slide, please. And for some more local context, Woodhaven Boulevard is a wide 150-foot street divided by a median with two-way traffic running north and south. 68th Road and Alderton Streets are 60-foot wide narrow streets, and Yellowstone Boulevard is also a wide street measuring 80 feet. And currently within the proposed project area is a non-compliant 6-story building, residential building on lot 35, which is the eastern part of the site. It was built in 1969, contains 51 units, and is 70 feet tall. And the development site, lot 2, has frontage on Woodhaven Boulevard and 68th Road, and currently contains a wedding boutique and floral shop and a 1-story auto repair shop. The northern half of the subject block, which is not included in the rezoning area, includes attached 2-story residences, and the block south of the project area includes a gas station and a 6-story residential building, as well as another similarly non-compliant 6-story residential building just east across Yellowstone Boulevard, both of which are 60 feet and 70 feet tall. Next slide, please. And some site photos here. Photo 1 shows the portion of the development site that contains a florist from Woodhaven Boulevard. And you can also see the gas station that's located directly south of the development site. Photo 2 shows a view southeast on Woodhaven Boulevard with the development site to the left and the cemetery would be to the right. Photo 3 is a view of the development site facing east from Woodhaven Boulevard. Next slide, please. Photo 4 is a view facing east at the intersection of Woodhaven Boulevard and 68th Road with the development site to the left. And here you can see the existing mid-rise residential buildings directly south and east of the development site. Photo 5 is a view of the development site facing northeast from that intersection, and photo 6 is a view facing north on Woodhaven Boulevard with the development site to the right. And again, the cemetery would be to the left here. Next slide, please. And this slide shows photos from 68th Road. Photo 7 is a view of the site from 68th Road where you can see the auto body shop. And photo 8 is a view northwest. And photo 9, again, facing west from 68th Road. Next slide, please. So the applicant proposes a new building that would consist of 8 stories. It would be a mixed-use building with a maximum building height of 85 feet and would total approximately 100,041 square feet at an FAR of 3.9. The applicant proposes approximately 92 new dwelling units, of which 28 would be made permanently affordable under MIH option 2 and would be reserved as heirs units. There would be approximately 8,000 square feet of commercial use and approximately 8,720 square feet of community facility use on the ground floor, and approximately 82,321 square feet of residential use on floors 2 through 8. And there would be 81 parking spaces provided, 64 of which would be contained in the cellar to be accessed via a new 22-foot curb cut on 68th Road with 17 additional spaces on a surface parking lot. Next slide, please. And the site plan shows the proposed 8-story building after setbacks provided at the 6th floor or 65 feet, and the building descends to 1 story in the rear. Next slide, please. And this proposed ground floor site plan shows entrances to retail use that would be located on Woodhaven Boulevard, and access to residential and community facility uses would be located on 68th Road. And the existing floral shop and wedding boutique, which is owned by the applicant, would be relocated in the commercial space of the proposed development. Next slide, please. Oops. I think that was one slide too many. If we can go back one, thank you. So to facilitate this development, the applicant proposes 2 actions, one of which is a zoning map amendment to change the existing C81 and R4 districts mapped in the project area to R6A with a C23 overlay comprising lot 2, which would be 100 feet deep from Yellowstone Boulevard and Alderton Street. This offers an increase to residential FAR in both lots. Residential use is not currently allowed in the existing C81, and the maximum residential FAR is 0.75 in an R4 district, so the proposed R6A would bump this up to 3.9 with heirs. Lot 35 is included in the rezoning area, but there are no redevelopment plans for this longstanding multifamily residential building. Next slide, please. And the application also includes a zoning text amendment to establish an MIH area, and the applicant proposes to map MIH options 1 and 2, and the AMI for this part of Community District 6 is roughly 63,000. Next slide, please. And the following slides would show illustrative renderings of the proposed development, and here is a view of the development facing northeast from the intersection of Woodhaven Boulevard and 68th Road. Next slide, please. Here's a view of the proposed development from the same intersection with a little more local context. Next slide. And finally, an aerial view that shows the proposed development also with more local context, particularly with the existing mid-rise residential context. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take any questions.
Commissioner De La Uz.
Hey, Kathy, thank you for the presentation. When this comes back, it would be, I think you said that they were planning to use MIH option 2, although they'll be mapping, proposing to map option 1 and 2. And you just said that the AMI level was 63,000. So in this part of the community board, although overall in the community board, which is what would get the preference, it is higher in the overall community board. I would just, it'd be interesting, I think, to see the data specific to seniors and AMI level.
Sure.
That I think they may be, if they map option 2 specifically and then have seniors, they may end up having a harder time filling those vacancies.
Okay, sure. I'll make sure that they're, we can speak more to how they'll accommodate that population.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Other questions from the commission? So this application is certified, and thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Item 3 on our agenda is a certification of a zoning map and zoning text amendments in the Bronx Community District 1. Our presenter is Manny Lagares.
Good afternoon, commissioners. This is the 261 Walton Avenue rezoning. Next slide, please. It's a private application by the Tuck-It-Away Associates, Deegan LLC. They are seeking a zoning map amendment to rezone the project area from a special mixed-use district, carrying M14 and R6A zoning districts, to RAA C24. They are also requesting a zoning text amendment to Appendix F of the zoning resolution, designating the rezoning area as an MIH area. This area, the following are actions that have occurred in this area. We had in 2009, the commission approved a 30-block area rezoning for residential and mixed use. In 2015, Mayor de Blasio made a commitment for $194 million in capital investment. And we also had the Lower Concourse North rezoning, a 1-block area north of the project area, a rezoning from M21 to R72 C24. Next slide, please. The project site is located in the Lower Concourse section of Bronx Community District number 1. Next slide. The project area is located on block 2344, lot 60. It's on a block that is bounded by East 140th Street to the north, Walton Avenue to the east, East 138th Street is to the south, and Girard Avenue forms the western boundary. Currently on the site is a 6-story vacant building built in the 1930s. It was last used as a storage facility, and it ceased operations due to a fire. Just south of the vacant building, you have a gas station, and north of the building on the same block, there's a air conditioning contractor and also a furniture supplier. Across Walton Avenue, to the east side, you have a car wash and industrial, light industrial uses. The project area is approximately 25,000 square feet and is an irregularly shaped through lot. So on the western boundary, you're looking at a self-storage facility across from the major Deegan Expressway. Next slide, please. The site was part of the 2009 Lower Concourse rezoning, a 30-block area intended to create a vibrant community with new mixed-use housing and waterfront open space. The area is highlighted with the red dashed line. As part of that rezoning, the Special Harlem River Waterfront District was created, and that's highlighted in yellow. The district was amended in 2017, where it was expanded to the south and updated to encourage greater connectivity and encourage the development of affordable housing. The district permits towers of up to 400 feet. The area has significant development. The area has seen significant development completed. It's under construction and proposed in recent years, some of which are highlighted in blue. This includes Bronx Point development, which was approved in 2019 and which will have over 1,000 units of housing with 260-foot and 375-foot towers. A mixed-use residential development that included 13 and 15-story residential buildings and a hotel at 149th Street and Girard Avenue. 425 Grand Concourse, which was approved in 2017 and includes a 25-story mixed-use residential building, and a proposed development which recently filed permits within the special district at 355 Exterior Street. This would include a 400-foot tower and over 700 residential units. Next slide, please. This is the area map, and as you can see on the area map, it's a lot of purple, light industrial uses, and with the just read before, the actions that I've included with the other applications, it will start more housing development in the area. Next slide. The project site, the 6-story vacant building, as you can see, and you also see the gas station right in front of it. The slide to the right is a view facing northeast, and you have the Major Deegan Expressway on the left. And this is the other side of the expressway looking southwest. Next slide, please. And this is a view looking southwest. You can see the project site on the right-hand side. Slide number 2, the another view of the building, and another view of Walton Avenue. What you can basically see here is low industrial buildings, some commercial buildings. Next slide. This is your existing and proposed map. On the left, you can see the as part of the special mixed-use district, the M14 R6A. This allows industrial, commercial, community facility, and residential uses. However, it has an FAR of 3.6 and a maximum building height of 80 feet. To the right, you have the applicant's proposal to establish the R8A zoning district. Since he is building a 12-story mixed-use building, approximately 206 dwelling units, this is more suitable for the development. Next slide. Here is your MIH map. The applicant has selected option number 1. The site is, you see the number 11 with the arrow pointing to it. Option 1 is 25% of the residential units targeted to households at and below 60% of AMI, and again 206 units. It's 51 permanently affordable units. Next slide, please. And this is your site plan. The first one on the left is the seller plan. Even though the applicant is within the transit zone, he has decided to provide 12 parking spaces at the seller level. Number 2, the floor plan. You have 2 commercial uses, and you have your residential lobby. The diagram on the right is just the residential units from floors 2 to 12. Next slide, please. This is what the building would look like. The mixed-use building, again, commercial, residential. It has a height of 124 feet after a setback of 15 feet at the 105 base height. The entrances for the residential and commercial uses would be along Walton Avenue, so one-way street. And the entrance to the below-grade parking would be on Girard Avenue. This building will have a FAR of approximately 181,300 square feet, out of which approximately 162,300 units will be residential and 19,000 square feet will be commercial. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Manny.
You're welcome.
Questions from the commission? Commissioner Ortiz.
Hi, Manny.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, and in looking at the proposed development, in particular the retail, I see that they plan to build 19,000 square feet of local retail facing Walton Street, which right now is not a retail street. It faces the rear, as I look at, the images you shared, the rear of really, I mean, there's no double-sided anything there. We'd be creating sort of an isolated set of offerings. And as you acknowledge in the project area description, the retail is on Grand Concourse. And so I wondered what the land use rationale was for, encouraging additional retail off of the main corridor, and whether there's any consideration of additional residential over retail on the ground floor of that location.
Okay, across, let me see, across from Walton Avenue, there is a car wash. And of course, that's, I believe, the only thing that's there, commercial, and then the light residential uses. I will look into your question, and I will get back to you when it comes back.
And we'll also ask the applicant to be prepared to address that, Commissioner Ortiz, when it comes for the public hearing.
Yes.
Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you. Manny, I'm wondering, looking at the zoning map, how much this application is a reflection of kind of rethinking the density that was put on the map in the lower concourse rezoning? Should we be anticipating, I mean, I can see that this is a location that could support the R8A designation. Did we make a mistake a while back? Should we be thinking about, should we anticipate future applications for the blocks to the north that would move the R6A to an R8A?
Okay, right now, I'm not aware of anything that's being proposed to encourage that rezoning to R8.
But is this something the Bronx office has looked at, is thinking maybe we undershot?
Yes, we did. Sean, you want to answer?
Yeah, Manny, I can jump in here, and good afternoon.
Yeah, sure.
Good question, Commissioner Levin. We originally, when the area was rezoned as part of the 2009 lower concourse rezoning, there was a building on the site. It was the Tuck It Away self-storage building, which had a fire in 2017, and now that the damage to the building is irreparable and would be demolished as part of its, at the time we thought there was potential for conversion, which is why we left it in the MX district with that underlying R6 zoning. Without the building there, in this case, towards the end of the block, it seemed like the R8 was appropriate. You have the C62A across the street. The commercial certainly didn't seem appropriate, but that level of density, I don't expect, kind of revisiting the entirety of the block. But for this site, without the building that was there, it seemed to make sense.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Knuckles.
Thank you. I just wanted to second Commissioner Ortiz's observation regarding retail, because it is desolate. There's obviously a lot, the area is desolate right now. There's a lot projected for it in the future. But I would also think, aside from possibly more residential, you might want to look at a community facility consideration for those spaces, because I do think that there could arguably be some uses, city-sponsored uses or otherwise, that could occupy such a space. But I do agree that that's a lot of retail for an area that really doesn't have a lot of residential population in it at the moment.
Yes, I will convey that information to the applicant.
Commissioner Marin.
Thank you. So most of my concerns have been addressed, but I do want to emphasize that I do agree that in this area, even though the immediate area is desolate, we have to remember that we have, you know, the mall, which is a little bit further south of here, about 4 blocks south of here, that really has a palette of stores and necessities that could be met for these homeowners. And we certainly don't want to set up, you know, because I voiced this on the Yankee Stadium corridor. You know, we don't want to set up these retail storefront type situations where we're supposed to enliven the street, and then we have a community facility where nothing really happened, and half of the facility remains sort of covered up with the appropriate amount of non-visual into the space. So I would opine that I really, yes, while the immediate area does not have a plethora of retail, there is plenty of retail up 149th Street. There's plenty of retail down at, and I think that's, I forget what it's called, the mall there. But also, I was a bit, you know, perplexed with the zoning as well. But as long as the applicant is happy, then I'm okay with that. I do think that there could be more mass here. This is an area that could hold it. And those are my only comments.
Thank you, Commissioner. Other comments? Then the application is certified. Thank you, Manny.
Excuse me, one more request, Madam Chair, please. Manny, if you can get us the sort of a facade of the what the pedestrian experience is going to be like, I think that would also be helpful to explain what's going on down there.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Moving on to the 4th item on our agenda, which is a certification of a special permit in the Bronx Community District 12. Our presenter is Justin Lamorella.
Thank you, and good afternoon, commissioners. This is an application by the Storage Fox, Inc. for a special permit to develop a self-storage facility within a designated manufacturing zoning district. Next slide. The location for the facility is located within the Eastchester neighborhood of Community District 12 in the Bronx. The site, located at 3536 Pear Tree Avenue, lies in an area of Eastchester between Boston Road to the north, Hutchinson River to the east, I-95 to the south, and Provost Avenue, Connor Street to the west. Next slide. The area is part of the Eastchester Industrial Business Zone, or IBZ, here outlined in purple. This area is comprised of primarily industrial uses, auto-related uses, and commercial uses, ranging from 1 to 4 stories in height, largely interspersed with parking lots and vacant land. Within a quarter-mile radius of the site, 35% of the area is either vacant or parking. A factory building has not been constructed in this area since 1962. On Boston Road and adjacent streets to the north, within the M31 zoning district, lie auto salvage and auto body repair facilities, a fence installation business, a materials recycling facility, a DSMY garage, a self-storage facility that's currently under construction, parking lots, and vacant land. To the east lies an M21 zoning district with auto salvage and repair businesses, a bowling alley, self-storage facility, parking lots, and vacant land. To the south lies several vacant parcels, auto salvage and body repair businesses, and a school bus storage lot. And uses to the west and opposite Pear Tree Avenue include auto salvage and auto body repair, glass businesses, a self-storage facility, parking lots, and vacant land. Nearby public transit includes the elevated subway line at the Eastchester Dyer Avenue 5 train station, located approximately a half mile to the northwest of the proposed development site. Additionally, the BX16 and BX30 buses, along with several Westchester bus routes, serve the area. Highways in the vicinity include the adjacent Boston Road, US Route 1, which is a designated truck route, Interstate 95, and the auto-only Hutchinson River Parkway, which is located 1 mile to the east. However, this highway infrastructure has had the effect of isolating this area. This section of Eastchester also contains several self-storage facilities today in a 1/4 mile radius, thanks to its proximity to local highways, demand, and amount of vacant or non-job intensive land available. You can see those facilities labeled as stars on this map. Next slide. The proposed development site consists of 3536 Pear Tree Avenue. The site is currently zoned M21 and is a vacant, irregularly shaped, approximately 39,000 square foot lot located on the corner of Pear Tree Avenue and Boston Road, with frontage on Heathcote Avenue. Based on DOB records, there appears to have been a 1-story building at the site around 1960, which was demolished around 1975. The site has been vacant for the past 45 years. Next slide, please. The applicant proposes to construct a new 4-story, approximately 75,877 square foot mixed-use banquet hall and self-storage building on the site with an FAR of 1.99. The proposed development will rise to a total height of 58.5 feet and will comply with all other applicable bulk regulations within the M21 zoning district. Next slide, please. The proposed 20,361 square foot banquet hall is allowed as of right. The banquet hall will be primarily located on the ground floor and will be accessed by an entry lobby located at the corner of Pear Tree Avenue and Boston Post Road. The banquet hall will also access a proposed outdoor terrace on the rooftop. Required parking will be attended valet parking with 95 spaces and will be provided within the building on the 2nd floor and on the outdoor parking deck located on the roof of the ground floor. A valet drop-off area will be located at the entrance to the banquet hall, and the valet parking spaces will be accessed by a ramp located on Boston Road. Next slide, please. The proposed 55,516 square foot self-storage facility is the subject of this special permit application in order to allow a self-storage facility within the proposed development. The proposed facility will be located on the subcellar, cellar, ground, 3rd, and 4th floors. Next slide, please. 4 required loading berths will be accessed by 2 new 24-foot curb cuts along Pear Tree Avenue, shown here in the rendering. Next slide, please. Customer parking and loading will occur within the outdoor parking and loading area accessed along Heathcote Avenue by a new 20-foot curb cut, shown here. Next slide, please. The self-service storage portion of the proposed development requires a CPC special permit, as it is a new self-service storage facility in a designated area as defined in Appendix J of the zoning resolution. To grant the special permit, the CPC shall find that the self-service storage facility is appropriate based on the land use characteristics of the proposed zoning lot and the surrounding area, and they may also consider a number of considerations that are shown here on the screen. The applicant discusses the appropriateness of the findings in their application, which you have all received copies of in the briefing package. So that concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
I certainly found it interesting to see how very different this site is from the last one that we considered. I'd welcome questions. Commissioner Marin.
Thank you. So Justin, I mean, out of curiosity, because I know this neighborhood really well, and it's had about 4 new storage facilities in the last 5 years. So Q Smart is small, Q Smart is new, the Treasure Island is new. I'm just curious, and Life Storage is new. So I'm just a little bit curious. Do you know who is being serviced by these storage warehouses? Is it? Can you, if it's in fact, you know, is it folks from the Bronx? Is it folks from Connecticut? It's just very interesting to see these storage warehouses at the edges of our highways, and knowing that most of the clientele is coming from out of state. So I'm just curious and trying to find out what the population is of users.
Yes, that's a really good question, Commissioner. I don't have that data, but that's a really good question that I can relate to the applicant team to make sure they get us that specific information.
Yeah, that would be really helpful. I mean, I'm just trying to understand it, because all over the edges of our, as I repeat, edges of our boroughs, specifically where highway nodes are, there's thousands of these self-storage facilities popping up. It's just interesting. I mean, how much do people store and where is it from? It's curious.
Commissioner Rumprashad.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of quick questions. Has the applicant been in touch with DOT with regards to these curb cut locations for, I know the catering hall, one at the corner, and two where I guess the loading bay areas are? I mean, it says narrow street. Do you know how wide that street is? I'm just curious if there's going to be any kind of traffic issue with trucks backing in there.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner. I am not sure if they've had those conversations with DOT, but we can certainly find out and get that information to you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Deleuze.
I'm just kind of struck by the number of facilities that Commissioner Mudding just mentioned. And I think it would just be helpful if, when it comes back, more information about the number of existing facilities could be shared. How many square feet, of storage space is that providing? How many of them recently came online? Obviously the customer profile, that would be helpful.
Any other questions? Okay, then the application is certified.
All right, item 5 on our agenda is a referral of a zoning text amendment in Manhattan Community District 2, and our presenter is Andy Cantu. There we go.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners. This is a private, first of all, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. This is a private application by Kenmare Square LLC for a zoning text amendment to modify the sub-district boundaries of the special Little Italy district map to facilitate the development of an 8-story, 85-foot tall commercial office building in the Nolita neighborhood of Community District 2, Manhattan. The development site consists of 2 lots on the east side of Cleveland Place between Spring Street and Kenmare Street opposite Petrosino Square, a small pocket park on the same block as the 6-train Spring Street stop. Next slide, please. The tenement style buildings on the project site were constructed in the mid-1800s. 25 Cleveland Place, the northern lot, is a little over 2,500 square feet in area. The 40-foot tall building has an FAR of 1.7 and is occupied by a restaurant on the ground floor and 5 rental dwelling units above. 23 Cleveland Place, the southern lot, is also 2,500 square feet in area. There, the 30-foot tall building on the site has an FAR of 1.4 and is occupied by a ground floor restaurant and 2 rental dwelling units above. According to the applicant, none of the residential units are rent regulated, but they can obviously speak more to that when the application comes back for hearing. Next slide, please. The development site is typical of the Nolita and Little Italy neighborhoods, which is characterized by narrow lots with high lot coverage tenement style buildings, most between 4 and 6 stories tall. These buildings are overwhelmingly mixed use with retail or eating and drinking uses on the ground floor and residential above. The buildings are not New York City individual landmarks or within a New York City designated historic district, but the site is within the Chinatown and Little Italy Historic District listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Next slide, please. This is just to give you a sense of the built character of the area immediately surrounding the development site. Although Little Italy and Nolita are primarily low-rise neighborhoods, the development site is in a sort of unique transitional area at the intersection of several major corridors. The scale of development along Lafayette Street is similar to the M15B district immediately to the west, where bulkier loft buildings predominate and where the Soho Cast Iron Historic District is located. Next slide, please. The Special Little Italy District, generally bounded by Bleecker Street, Canal Street, Lafayette Street, and the Bowery, was established in 1977 to protect and enhance the unique neighborhood character of the area. The special district is defined by 4 sub-areas: Area A, Preservation Area; Area A1, Mulberry Street Regional Spine; Area B, Houston Street Corridor; and Area C, Bowery, Canal, and Kenmare Street Corridor. The special district use and bulk regulations are generally more restrictive than those of the underlying commercial districts with respect to permitted uses, floor area and lot coverage, required yards, height and setback, facade and storefront treatments, and open space and landscaping requirements. Area A is the most widely mapped district, consisting primarily of 4 to 6 story residential buildings with retail stores at street level. Area A regulations are meant to strengthen the residential character of the area and provide local amenities. Large retail establishments and auto-related uses are discouraged in Area A. Area C is mapped along the district's wide two-way streets that see a large volume of commercial traffic, such as the Bowery, which is the neighborhood's major north-south corridor, and Canal and Kenmare Streets, which are connectors between the Holland Tunnel and Manhattan and Williamsburg bridges. At the time the Special Little Italy District was established, Area C formed a manufacturing and industrial corridor, contrasting with the other areas of Little Italy where residential and retail uses were encouraged. In recent years, however, these corridors have seen an increase in residential and mixed-use development as the demand for industrial and heavy commercial uses has declined. Next slide, please. This is a plan view of the east side of Cleveland Place with the development site highlighted in yellow. And this diagram north is to the left of the slide. 25 Cleveland Place, the northern lot, is entirely within Area A. 23 Cleveland Place, the southern lot, is split between Area A and Area C, which is mapped to a depth of 100 feet from the street line of Kenmare Street. Because the majority of 23 Cleveland Place's street frontage is within Area C, those regulations control for that lot. Next slide, please. The applicant is proposing to move the boundary of Area C 25 feet north from 100 feet to 125 feet north from Kenmare Street so that it captures a majority of the frontage of the development site. The 2 tax lots would then be merged into a single zoning lot and developed pursuant to Area C regulations. Next slide, please. This table summarizes the main differences between Area C and Area A regulations. Both subdistricts permit the uses allowed in the underlying C6-1 and C6-2 commercial districts, use groups 1 through 12, except that Area A prohibits use group 6D, which contains public service establishments such as police stations, use group 10, large retail establishments, and use groups 8C and 12D, which are auto-related uses such as parking garages and car rental facilities. In Area A, the FAR for all uses is 4.1. In Area C, FAR for community facility and commercial uses is governed by the underlying zoning. The maximum permitted FAR for community facility uses in Area C is 6.5, and the maximum commercial FAR for C6 districts is 6.0. There is no explicitly stated maximum FAR for residential uses in Area C, but given the other applicable height, setback, and lot coverage regulations, the effective maximum residential FAR on this site is approximately 4.8. Both subdistricts have the same lot coverage regulations for residential use, 60%, but for commercial uses in Area C, lot coverage regulations are less restrictive, 100% lot coverage at the ground floor and 70% above the ground floor. At 85 feet, Area C allows slightly taller buildings than Area A, where height is capped at 75 feet. Next slide, please. This map shows the change to the Area C boundaries would be reflected in the special Little Italy district map. Area C again would be mapped to a depth of 125 feet from the northern street line of Kenmare. The 100-foot depth would remain unchanged everywhere else Area C is mapped. Next slide, please. These illustrative massings show how the proposed text amendment would impact the project site. On your left is the development site under existing conditions, and on your right is what a commercial building could look like under the Area C regulations, the with action condition. In the middle is an example of a 75-foot tall commercial building that could be developed as of right under Area A regulations. Next slide, please. This is an elevation showing the eastern block face of Cleveland Place with the development site in yellow. Immediately north of the development site on your left is an overbuilt 136-foot tall condominium building with ground floor retail built in 1926. This building falls within Area A. To the south of the development site are 4 tenement buildings, also with active ground floor uses, that were built at roughly the same time as the structures on the development site. The tallest of these is approximately 60 feet tall, and all of these buildings fall within Area C. Next slide, please. This elevation shows the site redeveloped pursuant to Area C regulations. The applicant is proposing to develop an 8-story, 85-foot tall commercial building with retail on the ground floor and offices above. As proposed, the building would contain approximately 30,000 square feet of floor area. The tenements to the south could be redeveloped with 85-foot tall buildings as of right, matching the height of the proposed office building. Next slide, please. To summarize, the applicant is requesting a zoning text amendment to move the boundary of Area C of the special Little Italy district from 100 feet north of Kenmare Street to 125 feet north of Kenmare Street. The proposed text amendment would permit full lot coverage for ground floors that are occupied by commercial uses and 70% lot coverage for commercial uses above the ground floor, and allow for a building height of 85 feet or 8 stories. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Andy. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
Yes, thank you, Andy. In this application, it seems to me that the 10 more feet on the building isn't the big deal, but potentially the change in uses could have some implications for the neighborhood, particularly use group 10, which would allow large retail or maybe a large club or I don't know what. So when this comes back, well, knowing the community that's in, I'm sure we'll hear about it as part of the public review process. But I'd be very interested in hearing from the applicant what their plans are for tenanting this building. How do they see positioning it as a fully commercial building in this neighborhood? And also maybe if they have some examples of other properties they own in Lower Manhattan to help us understand the way they work in these densely residential neighborhoods.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll relay that question to the applicant and make sure they're ready to come prepared.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, then we will refer this application to the community board and to the borough president for 45 days.
Thank you.
Item 6 on the agenda is a pre-hearing review of a zoning text amendment and a special permit in Manhattan Community District 2, and Ezra Moser is our presenter.
Actually, before Ezra presents, I just wanted to share with the commission the sad news that a number of days ago, an employee of the Schubert organization fell to his death, and certainly our thoughts are with his family and also with the Schubert organization.
Indeed, echoing those sentiments. Hi, everyone. So hold on, I'll wait for the presentation to get pulled up. So as Ryan and Chair Lago pointed out, this is the Court Theater rehabilitation. This is returning for pre-hearing review. Next slide, please. So there's an application for a special permit under section 81-745, and this will grant a floor area bonus for the substantial rehabilitation of the Court Theater, which is located in Manhattan Community District 5. And the requested actions also include a text amendment to that same section to allow the bonus floor area to be distributed across the zoning lot. It was presented to the Commission on August 3rd and certified and referred on September 14th. And so this is a joint application that was made by the Schubert organization, who owns the Court Theater, and Clarity LLC, who is the owner of a hotel that will be using the bonus. So again, this requested special permit is intended to authorize 119,000 square feet of bonus floor area in exchange for the substantial rehabilitation of the Court Theater, and then that bonus would be utilized in a new 263,000 square foot hotel on the same zoning lot, the one owned by Clarity. And as noted, the text amendment allows a portion of that 119,000 square foot bonus to travel across district boundaries for incorporation of the proposed hotel. Next slide, please. So I'm going to quickly go over the theater's proposed rehabilitation and then discuss the proposed developments on the site, as well as the text amendment and findings. And then at the very end, I'm going to go over the committee board and borough president resolutions. And for this pre-hearing presentation, we'll be discussing the existing conditions of the theater at a very high level, but I have put more detailed slides in the appendix, which I just want to point out are also available to the public online as part of this presentation. Thank you. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the development site is located mid-block on a block that's bounded by West 47th Street, West 48th Street, and so between 6th and 7th Avenues in Manhattan Community District 5. As you can see here, it's just east of the northerly end of the Times Square bow tie, and it's in a high-density commercial area. It's located in the theater subdistrict core, a sub-area of the theater subdistrict, which is within the special Midtown district. Next slide, please. So the project area and the development site are the same, and they form a 47,699 square foot merged zoning lot. And the parcels on the zoning lot are under 4 different ownerships, which I will review on the next slide. Next slide, please. So the Schubert organization owns the Court Theater, which is seen in red. Clarity LLC owns lot 11, which is seen in yellow. And again, that's going to be developed with the hotel that utilizes all of the bonus floor area. And then McSam Corp., which is owned by hotelier Sam Chang, owns lots 55 through 59, which constitute the northern half of the blue site. And then Highgate LLC owns lot 7, which is the southern part of the blue site. Next slide, please. So these lots were all merged into one zoning lot as part of a complex real estate deal. For the purposes of the application, we've divided them into 3 sites. There's the Court Theater site, again, seen in red. The Clarity site, which is also referred to in the materials as the hotel owner site, that's seen in yellow. And then McSam/Highgate site. And so McSam and Highgate are grouped together because neither is using the bonus floor area that's being generated by this application. And they actually have a private agreement between the 2 of them to convey the excess as of right floor area pertinent to Highgate site to McSam. And then McSam plans to build a 273,000 square foot hotel on its portion of the site. And a key part of the Court Theater's rehab is construction of a new annex facility, the footprint of which is outlined in that red dashed line. Next slide, please. So this slide more clearly shows the relationship between the existing Court Theater building and the proposed annex. As you can see, the annex is in the dotted pattern, and then the diagonal lines are the existing Court Theater footprint. Next slide, please. In terms of zoning, the project area is primarily within a C6 5.5 district, which has a base FAR of 12, bonusable up to 14.4. And then it's also partly, on the left-hand side of the screen in a C6 17, which is higher density and has a base FAR of 14, bonusable up to 16.8. As I mentioned, the text amendment allows the bonus generated by the C67T portion of the zoning lot to travel across district boundaries and be utilized on the Clarity site in yellow, which is in the C6 5.5 portion of the site. Next slide, please. So this slide depicts the proposed site plan with existing structures to remain in the lighter shades of gray and the new developments in darker gray. So you can see in the top right-hand side of the screen in slightly lighter gray, that's the Court Theater's existing footprint. Directly to its left is the Court Theater Annex, which is in dark gray because it's a new development. To the rear of the court complex is again the Clarity proposed hotel, which will utilize the bonus. That's in dark gray because it's a new development. To its left, also again on 47th Street, is the Highgates Hotel, which is a 10-story hotel that is intended to remain. That's why it's in light gray. And then north of that, finally, is the McSam site, which is in dark gray because it is a new development, again, proposed at 273,000 square feet. Next slide, please. So this is a view of the Court Theater from 48th Street. And you can see its historic facade. This is looking southwest. Next slide, please. And then here also is from a view from 48th Street looking southeast, kind of back at the Court Theater. You can see its exposed wall with the green fenced area that you see extending to the right. The portion closest to the Court Theater is where the proposed annex will be. And then the majority of it is in front of the McSam portion of the McSam Highgate site. You can see also the Clarity Hotel rising behind it because construction has commenced on it. Next slide, please. So this is also from 48th Street, more of a wide angle view of primarily the McSam Highgate site. You can see, obviously it's a vacant site, prepped for development. Can we go one back, please? Can we go can we go one slide back, please? Well, 2 slides back. I'm not sure what's, yep, wait for it. One more slide back, please. One more forward, please.
Ezra, if you know the page number, that can help.
Sure. I believe we're talking about slide 13.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you. So I just want to point out in this panoramic view as well that the Highgates Hotel, which again is going to remain, the 10-story one is seen behind the McSam site. It's seen in beige. And then to the left of that is again the Clarity's Hotel, which is currently under construction. Thank you. Next slide, please. So this shows this is on 47th Street now, looking northwest, I believe, and this is the 47th Street facade of the Clarity Hotel. That's fine. We can stay on this slide. So under zoning, a substantial rehabilitation consists of major structural changes for the purposes of improving a theater's design and commercial viability. This includes improvements that expand backstage capacity, audience and user comfort, historic restoration, and as added by the applicant as part of the text amendment, the improvement of ADA accessibility. The text notes that a substantial rehabilitation does not include normal theater maintenance, painting, or improvements to the mechanical systems alone. Next slide, please. So the commission has only granted special permits under this section twice before, and the last was for the Biltmore Theater in 2001. So in order to assist the commission in the review, DCP requested that the applicant prepare a third-party report compiled by theater design experts, which assesses the significance of the various improvements to the theater. The report also opines on whether and to what extent the theater rehabilitation proposed meets the findings of 81745, and a draft version has been included in your briefing packets, and the final version will be officially submitted to the commission as testimony during this CPC stage. Next slide, please. So according to the applicant, the theater suffers from inadequate back of house spaces for modern productions, which include a variety of backstage and below stage infrastructure deficiencies. They cite items like the stage trap, dressing rooms, stage wings, mechanical bridges, rigging infrastructure, performer facilities, and backstage restrooms. It suffers from inadequate front of house support spaces, both for staff and for operations, like a lack of storage for concessions, coat storage, day-to-day items for the theater's operation. Poor audience amenities, such as insufficient and inconveniently located restrooms, insufficient lounge space, bars, and concession facilities. And then poor audience circulation that creates bottlenecks for both restrooms and concessions. And lastly, extremely limited ADA accessibility. Again, I'm prepared to discuss the existing conditions in detail if you have questions, and those detailed slides are located in the appendix. But for the purpose of the presentation, we're going to move on to the improvements. So next slide, please. So the applicant is proposing to renovate the existing theater, and as I alluded to, construct a new annex, which will substantially improve the theater's operations, its capacity, and its commercial viability. Generally, they will upgrade the back of house facilities, the front of house support spaces, improve audience amenities, and dramatically expand ADA access. And these improvements will allow the court to host musicals and more complex modern productions. Next slide, please. So the proposed annex would be a 35-foot wide, 5-story westward enlargement of the existing court theater building, and its footprint would be 3,100 square feet, and it would contain approximately 14,800 square feet of zoning floor area. And it would be connected to the existing theater building at every level, thereby expanding the functional footprint of each floor. Next slide, please. So this slide shows how the annex is connected to the existing theater building at the ground floor, and how it dramatically expands the front of house space, seen in green, and the back of house space seen in yellow. Vertical circulation would be provided mainly by a staircase at the northern end of the annex, which you can see, and then a new ADA elevator highlighted in white. And the annex would also allow for additional back of the house circulation core at the rear of the building. Next slide, please. So this slide just briefly shows the annex in the existing theater building in an elevation view. Next slide, please. So the annex will allow for a substantial expansion of the back of house footprint, and they'll add new levels for back of house programming. It will also double the amount of space for dressing rooms and provide new dedicated wardrobe and hair wig space, which will aid it in the ability to host musicals. Next slide, please. The annex also will allow for just generally an expanded below grade and orchestra level infrastructure. So let me see. Yeah, it will allow for just improved backstage items like the stage wings, new restrooms. Besides obviously the dressing rooms on multiple levels that we spoke about, and it will remove a bunch of obstructions that allow for just an overall improved back of stage capabilities, the ability to load and to use more complex scenery, and additional load-in space. Next slide, please. And then below grade, the applicant is going to expand the stage trap, which allows for the recovery of the old orchestra pit, which also is very critical for musicals, and will provide a new stage door to the street, which is kind of like an employees only entrance. And they're going to be dramatically expanding the number of back of house restrooms, including on the cellar level, a dedicated ADA restroom. Next slide, please. So the rigging system in gridiron will also be replaced and modernized to accommodate contemporary scenery elements and lighting equipment. Additionally, the bridges will be upgraded, and obstructions, as I alluded to, are going to be removed, which will allow them to accommodate more complex electronic equipment for modern productions. Next slide, please. Additionally, the annex is going to provide a new level with dedicated rehearsal space and a chorus room, which again are also critical to the theater's ability to host musicals. Next slide, please. The applicant's also making a series of substantial improvements to the front of house spaces and audience amenities. You see here that some of this includes expanded ADA accessible box office spaces. Next slide, please. So the applicant proposes to double the number of restrooms for patrons and distribute them across multiple floors of the annex. Of the new and expanded fixtures, 13 fixtures will be ADA accessible, where today there is a single portable ADA facility located outside in an adjacent alley. The applicant is also quadrupling the amount of audience lounge space. Can we go back one slide, please? 2 slides. Thank you. The applicant's also quadrupling the amount of audience lounge space and expanding and relocating concession areas in order to improve circulation and the audience's experience. All these concession and lounge spaces, I should also add, are going to be ADA accessible thanks to the new elevator core located in the annex. Whereas I do want to note that in the existing conditions, there is no ADA accessibility between any of the upper floors. Additionally, the annex allows for just vertical circulation to be streamlined and more evenly distributed in the existing conditions. As I alluded to, the current circulation patterns can create some serious log jams. And then the applicant is also replacing and reorganizing audience seating to be more comfortable. Its current capacity is 1,104 seats, and in the proposed conditions, it's actually they're gonna take out a few seats to make it more comfortable. It's gonna finish with 1,100 seats, so a net reduction of 4 seats. They're also creating new dedicated coat and concession storage spaces as well, and are creating new front of house support space in order to enhance the theater's operations. Next slide, please. So the applicant is restoring the historic interior and the historic facade, and they're proposing new exterior signage, which you can see here. Next slide, please. So this is just a detail slide of some of the interior and exterior historic restoration. It's good to note that according to the zoning text, historic restoration does count as part of eligible scope for substantial rehabilitation. Next slide, please. So as proposed, the rehabilitation would generate 119,000 square feet of bonus floor area, which would be utilized in a 263,000 square foot hotel, which you can see here on the right. It rises to 524 feet. In this view, we are on 47th Street looking north. To the left of the proposed bonus hotel, you can see the 10-story night hotel, which is shown in gray. This hotel, again, is part of the McSam Highgate portion of the zoning lot and will remain in its current condition. And just to clarify, it's the dark gray, as you can see with the label. Next slide, please. So here you can see the north side of the site in elevation. This is viewed from 48th Street looking south. You can see the Court Theater with the annex addition down at the bottom kind of left of the zoning lot, and the McSam development is located directly to its right, which is west in this view. The McSam Hotel is proposed to be 34 stories, which comes out to just over 331 feet in height. Next slide, please. So the McSam Group has filed a new build permit for the hotel that we just saw on the previous slide. However, we have included the depicted language on the drawing notes in the CPC application to permit flexibility for the McSam building and allow them to develop with any massing that complies with the special Midtown District as of right height setback regulations, which, as the note shows, are found in 8126 and 8127. Because it's on the same zoning lot as the Court Theater, McSam is subject to the requested special permit, and this special permit has findings related to bulk, distribution of bulk, and light and air. So this note allows the McSam building to alter its massing from what was illustratively depicted in the previous slide and on the special permit drawings, so long as it complies with the applicable as of right height and setback regulations. So again, I just want to reemphasize here that McSam will be developing with what's an as of right envelope, essentially under the underlying conditions. Next slide, please. So we're going to go on to the text amendment. The text amendment really includes just two small changes to the relevant section, the substantial rehab section, which is 81-745. And the first area of change is that it clarifies the type of scope items that qualify as substantial rehabilitation. And then second, next slide, please. And secondly, it grants the commission the ability to allow the bonus floor area generated by substantial rehab to be distributed across zoning district boundaries. It would only apply to split lots that are partially located in a C6 5.5 district, which essentially limits the applicability to the Court Theater site. And this would allow the full bonus generated by the court's rehab, all 119,000 square feet, to be used by the hotel on Clarity's site. Next slide, please. So these are the conditions and qualifications for the bonus. I'm just going to leave them up there for a minute. If you'd like to discuss, let me know with any questions. But these again are in the briefing packets. Next slide, please. And these are the findings for 81-745, which again are also included in the briefing packet. Next slide, please. So just to finish up, the community board approved the proposal with conditions. This is Manhattan Community Board 5, requesting that one, additional text be added or kind of kept in for the text amendment to make it apply only to the subject site. Specifically, they wanted the word in, they wanted to add the text specifying if the lot would be split between a C6 5.5 and a C6 7T, whereas the existing text is just says if you're partially in a C6 5.5 district. And then they also wanted the text amendment to keep in the word interior in terms of the eligible scope. The applicant had proposed to remove that word to allow for the annex facility to count, because that also is like an exterior enlargement. And then the third condition was that the project use union construction teams and that the proposed hotel on the Clarity site be a union hotel. And I can answer more clarifying questions about the community board's recommendations, and that's because, next slide, that's because the borough president also recommended conditional approval, but the condition being that the applicant agreed to CB5's request as outlined in their resolution. So that's the end of presentation. I'm sure there's going to be a number of questions, so I'm happy to answer.
Thank you, Ezra. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Levin.
Well, I don't want to be the one always with their hand up here, but I didn't see any of their hands raised. So thank you, Ezra. Yeah, I have I guess a preview of a discussion I'm hoping we're going to have at the hearing, and then maybe a question. You know, the big question here is it's our job to decide how much of a bonus should be allowed for this work, and I'm fully persuaded that the work is necessary and appropriate and will you know, be an enhancement of this theater and good for the theater district, and you know, all the economic development and practical arguments that are being made in favor of this expansion I fully agree with. But for us, it's a question of evaluating the amount of the bonus. And the trouble I've always had with this text is that we're supposed to make a quantitative judgment based on some qualitative conditions. And I know the HRA and Fisher-Dax reports go into that in some detail, but I'm hoping that whoever testifies on behalf of the applicant on Wednesday can take us through the analysis that they would like us to make about the amount of the bonus. Because in effect, what we're doing is printing money to allow this expansion to occur. So we just need to be clear about what we're doing. We're fine, we're doing it, but we need to be doing it carefully. And then I guess I just wonder, can you take apart for me a little bit the community board's position about the word interior? Are they arguing that building the annex should, because it's exterior, should not count for the bonus? Or are they just wanting to emphasize the interior?
I think that their position is that it's essentially it's not excluded by, you know, keeping the word interior, and that because there is, you know, a like a volumetric expansion of the space on the inside by creating the annex, that it is technically an interior improvement. Whereas my recollection is that the applicant's, you know, striking of the word interior, which, you know, was workshopped with DCP zoning division, is just about allowing for additional clarity that this, you know, this westward expansion.
All right, so there's no substantive issue with the use of the expansion to count for the bonus. It's just about the wording in the text.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, there's the, you know, potential concerns about work being done in an exterior that is not historic restoration, strictly speaking, I guess, getting counted towards a scope, but that does not seem to apply to this site. That was more of a philosophical.
Okay. Also on Wednesday, I hope the applicant can bring us any thoughts they may have about where there are still some TDRs that the Rockefeller Group, who was in the middle of all of this transaction to begin with, owns. And I wonder if there are any thoughts about landing sites for receiving sites for those TDRs. And then my last question is about, there's a 100 space parking garage planned for the Clarity site. Is that, and that's as of right, is that correct?
That's correct. There is a certification that's currently being processed that waives some of the parking area as counting towards floor area above 23 feet, below 40 feet. So that's, you know, the only action that's being sought with it. But yes, the parking is as of right.
But that's a chair certification, or?
That is a chair certification, I believe.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you, and we're glad you raised your hand. I always like seeing it raised, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Burney.
Hi, I just wanted to follow up on Commissioner Levin's question about the amount of TDR generated by the theatre renovation. And obviously this isn't the first theatre TDR, and I wonder if there's any guidance we can get here on what's been done before, or if there's a, you know, on the case of the plaza bonuses, there's a kind of a set factor that's used, just to sort of give some sense of what has been done in the past, or what might be a guiding principle.
So the third-party report, you know, attempts to the best of our, you know, to the best thinking so far to, you know, evaluate the scope for how it not just aligns with previous approvals, because again, there's only 2, so it's a relatively thin history. But additionally, they go through every single item in the scope and, you know, break it down in quite fine-grained detail. And they have, you know, several columns, which columns for the different ways in which scope items can qualify as substantial rehab. So, you know, does it improve the theater's commercial viability specifically? Is it a major structural improvement? Is it historic restoration? And they go through and check off whether these different items are, you know, fall under these categories, or if conversely, they're kind of routine maintenance. So between looking at each item in the scope on that individual level, and then taking that and comparing it to the existing precedents in terms of, you know, did the City Center Theater, for example, created something kind of akin to an annex space. It was a side stage expansion, and, you know, it was granted, you know, X amount of square feet. And so that's how they've gone about evaluating it. The report, again, the draft version is included in the briefing packet. The final version is going to be submitted shortly as written testimony, and they will have members of the consultant team on hand, is my understanding, to testify and to answer questions at Wednesday's hearing.
Oh, okay. I'll take a look at that. I didn't see that in the package. I'll take a look. Thank you.
Commissioner Deleuze.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. You know, one thing that I'll be interested in hearing is obviously COVID has impacted both the hotel sector and the theater sector very, very significantly. And so on the one hand, it's like, great, they're still wanting to move forward with this. But I'm just, you know, interested in their perspective about how COVID overall has impacted, you know, those involved with the transaction, and how they see this as still being in, you know, advancing their goals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure they'll be prepared to speak to that. They've given us every assurance that, you know, they intend to follow through with the project, and, you know, that it's going to be completed.
Commissioner Levin.
Yeah, just as a follow-up to the conversation between Ezra and Commissioner Burney just now about evaluation. Of course, another point of reference we have is the way the Theater Subdistrict Fund works, which is a different situation. But remember that some of us will remember that back in 2016, we went through a whole process to try and reassess the amount that would have to be paid into the subdistrict fund when development rights were transferred from landmark theaters. What it boiled down to, the reason it failed at the city council, but what it had embedded in it is the notion that development rights, transferable development rights in the theater district now 4 years ago were worth about $350 a square foot. So that's another resource we have for analysis of the quantitative side of this, or at least I guess I would put that out there for the applicant. Why shouldn't we be looking at that? Because I would observe that kind of miraculously, the math works out that at $350 a foot, this will pay for the project as described in the HRA report.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And I don't see any other hands raised, but we will have the opportunity to ask more questions when this comes to a public hearing on Wednesday.
Okay, moving on, item 7 on the agenda is a city council modification scope determination for 11040 Saltel Avenue, a zoning map and zoning text amendment in Queens Community District 4. The city council proposes to modify the zoning text amendment to eliminate MIH option 2, leaving option 1. Staff believes that this modification is within scope.
And so I would ask that for an assent by ayes to send a letter to the council saying such. In favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
All right, for future votes for Wednesday, November 18th, 2020, staff have prepared reports for 1501, 1555 60th Street rezoning, 265 Front Street, and the PS 48 landmark. If there are any further questions on any of those, we do have staff on hand to. Okay. See no hands raised. And then also scheduled for decision are Chester Place and 151 Dudley Avenue, which are Staten Island special district actions. Okay.
And that's be all the business, right?
Yep, that concludes this review session for Monday, November 16th. The time is 3:20 p.m. Thank you.
See you on Wednesday.
So long. Bye.
Okay.